It was 4 a.m. when Daniel first heard the familiar sound of his alarm, its shrill tones slicing through the quiet of his small, cluttered apartment. He reached over, fumbling for the off button, his hand heavy from sleep. His eyes barely opened, still fighting the weight of exhaustion. He'd barely slept, having spent the previous night scrolling through job applications, frustration growing with each click. The low hum of the city outside mixed with the pounding in his head. Another night, another restless sleep. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, cursing his life, his dead-end job, the financial struggle that was his constant companion. The only light in his room came from the streetlights flickering outside his window. He was 29, and the reality of his situation had started to weigh on him like a ton of bricks. He had always dreamed of more than the endless cycle of bills, rent, and barely scraping by. But every time he thought he was close to making something of himself, life would drag him back to where he started. The weight of those thoughts kept him trapped in bed, unsure of what to do, unsure of how to change. This morning, however, something was different. His phone buzzed with a notification, a motivational video from a guy named Jake. It had been sent by a friend who seemed to have his life together, the kind of person Daniel envied. The video title flashed on the screen: "The Secret of Waking Up at 4 a.m., How It Changed My Life." With a sigh, Daniel dragged himself upright and swiped at the screen. "Waking up at 4 a.m., he muttered under his breath, rolling his eyes. He'd heard about these morning rituals before, people claiming they changed their entire lives just by getting up early. But what did it really take to make that kind of change? Could waking up an hour earlier actually make a
The secret is
difference?
simple. Waking up at 4
Despite his
a.m. gives you
doubts,
uninterrupted
Daniel
time to
clicked
plan and
play.
grow. This
Jake's
transforms your
voice,
day and accelerates
calm
your
and
success.
confident, filled the room. "It's 4 a.m. Do you know what successful people are doing right now? They're up, working, getting ahead. And so should you." Jake went on to explain how waking up at 4 a.m. had transformed his life. He'd gone from a struggling man with no direction to a thriving entrepreneur, all because of the habit of starting his day at 4 a.m. He swore by it. Start your day with intention, and you'll finish it with success. Daniel listened, skepticism building in his chest. Yeah, right, he thought. But something in Jake's words hit him harder than he expected. Maybe it was the desperation that had been eating away at him for months. Maybe it was the fact that he felt he had nothing left to lose. So, with a quiet resolve, Daniel decided to try it. The next day, he'd wake up at 4 a.m. The alarm rang again, and this time, Daniel didn't hesitate. He slapped it off, sat up, and swung his legs over the edge of the bed. His body felt like lead, but he had made a promise to himself. "No more excuses," he whispered to himself. "It's time to change." For the first few days, the 4 a.m. wake-up call felt brutal. His eyes burned, his body ached, and his mind screamed for the comfort of sleep. But Daniel pushed through. He stumbled into the bathroom, splashed cold water on his face, and immediately started working on his side hustle. A small graphic design business he'd barely put any effort into. But something changed. He felt more awake than he had in years. As the days passed, he began to notice the smallest improvements. His mornings, once filled with grogginess and dread, were now filled with purpose. The first breakthrough came after a week. Daniel had always felt like a failure at his side business. He couldn't bring himself to put in the effort, and the lack of results made him question his own worth. But with the 4 a.m. habit, he had more energy. He spent his mornings brainstorming, sending out emails, working on new designs. Something in him clicked, and suddenly, his side hustle started gaining traction. He landed his first big freelance project, something he never thought was possible before. But it wasn't just his business that was improving. He felt better mentally, emotionally, and physically. His job, the one he had once hated, began to feel less draining. His boss
Congratulations on
noticed
this
his
achievement.
improved work
Thank
ethic,
you, sir. I'm honored.
and the recognition
Keep up
he
the great
received
work.
gave him more confidence than he'd ever had. It was like the fog had lifted, and for the first time, he could see the possibilities ahead of him. However, it wasn't always easy. There were mornings when he wanted to give up, when his body ached from lack of sleep and his mind screamed for rest. But he pushed through. Slowly, the habit became second nature, ingrained in him like a lifeline. He began using the time before 9 a.m. to do things he'd never thought possible. Working on personal projects, exercising, reading, and even meditating. His mornings no longer felt like a chore. They felt like an opportunity. 6 months into the 4 a.m. habit, Daniel could barely recognize the person he had been before. He was no longer the guy who waited for things to change. He was the guy who made things happen. He had completely transformed his life, not because of some magic trick, but because of one simple habit. A habit that began at 4 a.m. every single day. Sometimes, I still can't believe it, he told his best friend, Chris, one evening after work. I'm actually getting ahead, man. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm living. Chris raised an eyebrow. What's the secret? You just wake up at 4 a.m. and everything changes. Daniel laughed. It sounds insane, but yeah, that's pretty much it. But it's not just about waking up. It's about what you do with that time. You start the day with intention, and that changes everything. It's about being proactive, not reactive. Taking control of your life instead of waiting for life to push you around. Chris nodded slowly, clearly intrigued. Maybe I should try it. And try it, Chris did. A few weeks later, Daniel received a message from him. Man, I've been waking up at 4 a.m., and it's insane. My whole perspective has shifted. It's not easy, but I'm starting to see results. Daniel smiled at the message. He'd changed his life, and now he was helping others change theirs too. The power of 4 a.m. wasn't just about waking up early. It was about taking control of your time, your mindset, and your future. And in that moment, Daniel knew it wasn't just a habit anymore. It was the key to unlocking his potential. The habit of 4 a.m. had changed his life. And it could change anyone's life too.
Yes, new client, this is amazing.
Like
my side hustle is really taking off.
Self-improvement and victories, both big and small. Daniel was no longer the man who had struggled to make ends meet. Instead, he was thriving. He had more energy, a better outlook on life, and the satisfaction of seeing tangible results from his hard work. But the 4 a.m. habit wasn't a magic bullet. There were still challenges, still moments of doubt. But Daniel had built the strength to face them, and each day he woke up at 4 a.m., he grew stronger. One morning, as he sat at his desk, working on a new project, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was from Chris again. This time, Chris wasn't just sharing his own successes. He was asking for advice. Hey man, I've been waking up at 4 a.m. for a month now. I'm feeling better, but I'm struggling with consistency. Some days I hit snooze, and it feels like I'm back to square one. How do you stay consistent? Daniel smiled, knowing that this was a question he had asked himself countless times. Consistency had been the hardest part of the journey, but now it was second nature. He typed a response quickly, his fingers flying over the keys. It's not about perfection. It's about getting back up every time you fall. Some days will be easier than others, but the key is showing up. You have to make that time yours, no excuses. And when you slip up, don't beat yourself up. Just get back at it the next day. Chris replied almost instantly. Thanks, man. I needed to hear that. Daniel leaned back in his chair, looking out of the window. The city below him was waking up just as he had been for months now. He was in a place of calmness, clarity, and purpose. Something he had never thought possible when he was still living in the chaos of late nights and endless worry. But the changes weren't just internal. Daniel's external world was shifting too. His freelance business began to snowball as he gained more clients through word of mouth. He was also taking on more responsibility at his day job, which led to better pay, and for the first time in his life, he felt financially stable. The 4 a.m. habit had done more than just give him extra hours in the day. It had given him the discipline to make better choices, to be proactive rather than reactive, and to push past his comfort zone. It was like he had unlocked a hidden part of himself that had been dormant for far too long. There was one day in particular that Daniel would always remember. It was an afternoon, and he had just finished a meeting with a potential client who had signed a contract with him. He was walking back to his apartment, feeling on top of the world. He passed a man selling books on the sidewalk, the pages of the books flapping in the breeze. Daniel stopped, his feet still on the pavement. One particular book caught his eye, its title printed in bold letters, The Power of Habit. He laughed to himself and reached for the book. The title felt oddly fitting, like the universe was giving him a nudge. He handed the man a few dollars and tucked the book under his arm. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had already been living the power of habit, hadn't he? That evening, as he sat on his couch, flipping through the pages, the book resonated with him in ways he hadn't expected. The author talked about how small habits, compounded over time, could shape not just individual lives but entire communities. Daniel had seen the truth in that. He'd gone from a man barely surviving to someone creating real change. Not just for himself but for others, too. His 4 a.m. habit had started as a small change, something so simple, so basic. But it had led him to bigger things. Financial success, personal growth, deeper relationships, and, most importantly, the confidence to believe in his own potential. As the months passed, Daniel's life continued to evolve. He got involved in his community, mentoring others who were struggling like he once had. He shared his story, how the 4 a.m. habit had been the turning point for him. He encouraged them to take that first step, to make a commitment to themselves and their future. Daniel looked back on those first few mornings, the ones where he'd fought so hard to wake up, where every part of him screamed for more sleep. He'd wanted to quit more times than he could count. But looking back now, it was those moments of resistance that had shaped him. They had been the moments that made him strong. He thought about how far he'd come, how waking up at 4 a.m. had been the start of something bigger than he could have ever imagined. The idea of success wasn't a distant dream anymore. It was his reality. One evening, Daniel sat in front of his computer, typing away at his latest freelance project. He had just completed another task for his side business, one that would help him grow even further. As he hit send on the email, he felt a sense of pride that had eluded him for years. It was the pride of knowing that he was living his life on his terms, not just surviving, but thriving. His phone buzzed again, and this time it was a message from Chris. "Man, I finally got the promotion, and I'm still waking up at 4 a.m. Thanks for pushing me to stick with it. I'm doing better than I ever thought I could." Daniel smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. He typed back, "You earned it, man. Just keep showing up every day." As he closed his phone, Daniel looked out at the night sky, a small smile tugging at his lips. The stars were clear tonight, and for the first time in a long time he felt at peace. His life wasn't perfect, but it was his, and every morning at 4 a.m., he knew he had the power to make it better. And so the cycle continued. He woke up at 4 a.m. not because he had to, but because he wanted to, because it had changed his life. And in those quiet, still moments before the world woke up, Daniel knew that if he could do it, so could anyone else. It was all about consistency, discipline, and the belief that small actions, done every day, could lead to extraordinary results. Asterisk, if Daniel's story inspired you, and you're ready to take control of your life, then hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment about your own journey. When you commit to change, you open the door to endless possibilities. Let's build our dreams together. Asterisk.